Okay, so starting meeting for today, the recorded part, we just agreed on something for the launch of the new brand that's going to happen next week. So move on to the other topics. First topic I've got here up for vote is the RFP proposal for secure smart contract libraries. This has been published in the coalition channels, and I have not seen a large bunch of comments to those document. The only comments that I just raised to Stefan was that there is still reference to EOS smart contracts in the requirements, which I would ask to rephrase to EOSIO / whatever is called in the future smart contracts. And then there is one technical question. Is there a requirement to have one or various different smart contract templates that are required for the chain? So is there some flavor of smart contracts we have to verify for WAX, EOS, or UX that is not a standard smart contract template? Is there any specialties that we need to consider and have variances of those smart contract templates?
I cannot really think of such requirement for WAX. We're using standard format.
Same. I think like I look into it and I didn't find anything that would be chain specific. This is all like a pretty generic stuff.
Yeah, it's like minting contracts, but minting contracts might be different depending on the contract types you're using. Like on EOS, like on TELOS, we use Marble standard to an extent, and WAX uses a different standard, but that's also should not be a problem, right?
Right. I mean, like this is all of these are kind of, I guess, like I would call them like level 2 or like these are not system contracts, so they should be running on any chain without like any like significant differences.
Yeah, okay. And I just see Arik also commented in the coalition chat that he doesn't think that there is any technical requirement for this. So that makes sense. So it's really just slide formulation amendments that would be required. Are there any further comments on that document from any of the chains?
I would just say that the renaming of EOS or EOSIO to X is not an issue at all. The bidding period has already passed. We know who's bidding on this, and kind of irrelevant to change the RFP for that, in my opinion. So I would not have that as a delay to approve the RFP is all I'm saying.
Okay, so I would bring that up for vote to approve if there's no further comments. Okay, no further comments. So asking all the chains to put up their vote to approve the RFP to send out to the bidding parties. EOS.
Hey, Kirsten, you and Justin and I will have to have a quick chat in our channel as we vote this.
Okay. Yeah, go on there, Douglas. So Eve,
I have a question, Jeff. You're online, yeah. So what I said makes no sense. If the RFP is not approved yet, how did anybody already do the request for proposal intent to bid?
It hasn't. For this one, assuming it passed today, we would likely post it and open that up on Monday, and they would have that following week.
Gotcha. So yeah. That has not occurred. So my comment is irrelevant. It is possible that somebody else would vote on this.
That's correct.
But it's also possible the person that would vote on this would now see that the name has changed, and throughout the bidding process, which we would now work on with them, make it very clear that EOS doesn't exist anymore, that this new thing exists. Again, still kind of irrelevant, but yes, the name change within the RFP, I guess, has more weight now. The process hasn't occurred yet. While having saying that the weight that it does have is probably very, very minimal.
Okay, so generally from the content of the RFP document, is that fine for EOS?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
So yeah, I wouldn't say that this should be a delay to, or a additional hold up. That still remains.
Okay, thank you. Guillaume?
Yes, content is fine.
Thank you. Lucas?
That's a yes.
Thank you. Douglas for TELOS?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. So it's a yes of all 4 chains. So we move forward. Talking about the public tender, I've been discussing this with Jeff in our weekly call. This is open tender as far as I understand, right? So we know some parties that might want to bid on this, but the original party that was involved, as far as I understand, did not opt in.
There was
to
no
bid.
No, there was no original party. This item came about after the coalition was formed, essentially. This did not stem from blue papers. So there is no original party.
I think it did. Secure Smart Contract Library was part of Audit Plus.
Sorry, I thought we were talking about the P2P networking code rewrite.
Oh no, I think we're talking about Secure Smart Contract Library.
So correct then. Yes, the team that originally wrote this, I'm all messed up then. The team that originally wrote this, apologies, the team that originally wrote this did decline to bid on this.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Sorry, my bad.
No worries.
I'm looking in the channel, and the document that I'm reviewing is the peer-to-peer one, no?
If you look on your
I'm looking at the wrong one. Never mind. I'm looking at the wrong one. Disregard everything I just said.
But maybe you should then recast your vote just to make sure.
No, I'm recasting my vote. I'm good with that. Yes, everything is okay. And okay. Yes, the audit. Sorry guys, the audit team, or the people that wrote the Audit Plus blue papers, both of the teams, Slowmist and Sentinel, did waive their right of first bid, and so yes, that remains accurate. So we are good to then do an open RFP process on this. Correct.
Perfect.
Have we talked about how we're going to announce the RFP bidding process and any kind of information we're going to be putting forward to those? Because now it's at that point it's wide open. So
we've been doing it. Every other RFP has been open as well.
That's true. Okay.
So the marketing side of things or the communication side of things, I believe, is already established. All right. It would be great if, and this part I'm not sure if the other chains have been promoting it as well. I know we have been with the ENF. So maybe that's something that we could improve on, is just wider reach.
Yeah. I've been discussing it with Jeff also and internally inside our group. And we know of 2 parties in the TELOS ecosystem that would actually be interested to bid on this. So this one is for the other ones, we kind of all knew that the parties that have been drafting the RFPs are actually the best to also develop it. So we didn't publish it so proactively, but for this one, we would push it proactively and encourage some of the parties in the TELOS ecosystem to bid on it.
One of the tricky things that's going to come about is that, for example, this is a very good example for this one. The RFP was drafted because this is kind of a standalone item, and the original team that talked about this in the blue paper did not want to participate in this anymore. There's a team that helped draft this particular RFP. In the future, what will we do when we need somebody to actually help draft the RFP, but that it's probably not going to be the people that bid on this, or that multiple people will bid? We need to somehow have expertise in-house to be able to draft the RFP without relying on potential bidders. So this one relied on a potential bidder.
We'll probably need to pay to develop the RFP, right? There will probably need to appropriate some amount of funds, to pay somebody to really go through and create a complete, thorough RFP. Otherwise, and it has to be somebody knowledgeable, and it won't, and it can't I don't think we're going to have the in-house knowledge to do every single thing, right? There's going to be, experts that we go to for various subject matter, and that's just how that's pretty common, right? Your first job is often to define the job.
So
Somebody else has some other process that you recommend.
The organization that drafted this, they are aware that there is a potential for multiple companies bidding on this. So that would not be a surprise. That was made clear to them up front.
I'm just talking about moving forward, right? So, and I think that was your question, right, Eve?
Yeah. So how do we do this going forward when we might have an idea, but that we don't necessarily have the in-house expertise, whereby we reach out to somebody who will likely bid, but then after they put all the work in to do the RFP, that they might not even win it because others who didn't even know of this, that we didn't even know existed, then bid. So yes, I think it goes back to what you said, Douglas, where we should likely have a budget for those who are going to help draft the RFP, knowing that they may not win the RFP.
Right. And they do get a bit of a leg up. That's fine, but they're not guaranteed to win, and that's fine. The bulk of the payment is going to be in the actual project, not generating the RFP. So if we can better clarify what we're trying to do and really nail down all the deliverables and everything, it will save us money in the future. So I would just say when we as a group get excited about some concept that we want to do an RFP on, what we ultimately vote on, is somebody's going to have to take lead and say, hey, who's going to be good for this? Go connect with them, find out, invite them to do this. We don't have to, and this is a small community. So we probably know who would be good for that. And we'll have just a few people and for any specific subject matter. And we'll go to the people that we as a group just think are capable of doing it, and see who wants to do it, pay them, and then we have a thorough RFP. So
that we don't have sour grapes either, right? Where if the person who drafted the RFP still feels that at least they got compensated for drafting that, despite potentially not winning the bid.
Right.
I think that creates
their
a
own
better
distinct
system.
deal.
For sure.
They should be able to walk away.
Feeling good.
They should be able to walk away feeling they got paid, whether they get the job or not, and that's pretty common.
I would propose to use like an agency model. If you look at advert agencies, when they pitch for large mandates, they get at least a recharge for the effort they put into the creation of that. So once we have get to a point where we have to have RFPs drafted by external parties, we could give that as an additional paragraph inside that RFP template and state that for this specific RFP, we will recharge or pay the efforts to create that document based on a defined rate and an hourly an hourly tracking of how much time they spent to create this.
And the caveat in all of this is when the coalition deems something a priority. So the decision's already been made that we want to explore an item and create an RFP, right? So it's not a team comes to us and says, hey, I'll draft an RFP that you guys didn't even want in the first place. So it all starts with the coalition determines we've got a priority. Now we need to go through a process.
Yeah, somebody could come to us and say, hey, have you thought about this? And at that point, we could deliberate, and maybe they would be the people we'd go to, or maybe they wouldn't, right? But the process has to be that we as a group decide that we think it's worth pursuing, and it's worth allocating some funds to get an actual RFP professional RFP created. That'll keep
With
us
also
from
the
from running
caveat that
down.
it's possible we do an RFP, we pay for the RFP, and people bid, and we still don't assign a contract, right? That's in the RFP as well. Is that just because we have an RFP out doesn't mean we find the people that we want to, or the teams to work on that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody bats 1,000, so so we can't expect everything that we spend time and energy and money on to come to fruition. It's the, that's just natural. So there's no guarantee. It's not like a government contract where one of the bidders is guaranteed to get it,
Okay, so Jeff, I think that's something we can work on in our next call to kind of draft a paragraph for this and bring it up into the RFP template and have like basically two templates. One is where we have resources to draft the RFP ourselves, and one where we request the external parties to actually write the RFP for us. Does that make sense, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, the second one is basically just a contract, though, right? Because we're not asking people to bid on writing the RFP.
No,
correct.
Somebody and say, "Hey, here's how much we're going to pay you. This is what we need. Let's write a contract."
Correct. Yeah, we're going to
Makes sense,
pick
yeah.
people. We're going to invite them. We may invite two people and informally say, what would you do it for? What would you? But generally, it's going to be. We'll be lucky if we have one really good resource who we feel has a complete enough domain knowledge about what we're asking to be able to create the RFP for us. We can't put everything out to bid. We'd just be wasting a lot of time. It's way more efficient to do it this way.
Yes.
My
Okay.
view.
Makes sense. So we will draft something there and come back to the coalition. I still have this GitHub migration scenario that obviously is linked to all the branding discussions we had earlier. I'm not sure. I don't recall Jeff, if there is the brand name mentioned in that Excel spreadsheet. So I won't ask you to share it right now. So, but I would like if you want to give us a short update on what you've been working on and share the document in the Core Coalition channel, then that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, it's as we talked about earlier, next week will be a launch of the new brand. So what we've done is we've put together essentially a work breakdown structure of the things that engineering will need to work on to make sure things like the repo is moved over, that the code is appropriately scrubbed of the code name Mandel. And on all the various tasks that engineering went through and identified permissions and so forth. In addition to that, we also met with the ENF marketing communications team and also the ENF developer relations team to also think through, outward facing exposure such as documentation, communication channels, and so forth. One of our open items that we've already started the process was we were going to create, and we did create kind of a baseline of here's what our marketing communications is planning on doing over the next, not just week, but as you guys know, marketing will continue to go after that to reinforce the announcement. We were going to make sure to share that across the other chains so that we could also make sure that there was general coalition, coordination in getting the message out. Kind of, in a lot of those bullet points were mentioned earlier in this call on just the objectives to reach there. So, by this meeting next week, almost all of those activities will be completed. So. That's great news, is that we've got a lot of people pounding through on the engineering side. And as of right now, there do not seem to be any blockers on this. So that's really the overall of what we've done on that. The spreadsheet does mention, I guarantee, the new brand a number of times. So yes, we definitely don't want to share it in the recorded session.
Yeah. Okay. And then this is also, obviously, we could take this as a blueprint for any of the chains having to migrate parts of repositories or full repositories for specific projects over to the new repositories. And so you have this as a checklist and don't forget specific parts. So that's great work Adam has been carried out there. So I think we're on a good way on planning this and having a template for the future. So next topic we would like to touch is the project management resources, specifically for WAX and UX. Hoping that Lucas is still there. Yes, you're still there. So we've been discussing this in our call this week, and it would be great. I mean, you're Guillaume and Lucas, you're very, very hard to grasp sometimes, but doing great apart from that. So the question is, do you have or do you want to assign some more specific project management resources for specific tasks that would possibly be easier to get hold of than yourself? Would that make sense to you, or is that something that you wouldn't consider at this moment?
No, we can add Jassy as a backup to me for sure. Maybe we can add her to our Telegram channel as well, if she's not already there.
I believe she is. I believe we've added her a while back. And so, Kirsten, if you search for Jassy in the group, she should already be there. And I believe she's in the comms channels with you guys as well.
Yeah. So any sort of communications or marketing we want to do, she would be also helping coordinating that. And then it's probably good if you're tagging me for anything, then also tag her. So that way she can chase me down as well.
That's great.
And I apologize if I'm not as responsive. I'm just spinning a lot of plates, guys.
This wasn't.
We can all understand. Everyone here can understand that.
It wasn't meant to kind of attack you in any way, Lucas. We just wanted to make your life easier and having another touch point for the project management tasks.
Super. No worries.
Okay, Guillaume, do you have somebody that you want to kind of put next to you, or you feel comfortable with the current situation?
Yeah, I mean, as a backup, there's always Darren for the UX side of things. It's with a Y, DARYN. And we have Benedict also who is in the channel. So typically what happens is if I'm not able to make it for one call, Darren's going to take over. And if for some reason neither Darren or I was available, it would be Benedict. So that's kind of how we internally decided to go about it. When it comes to actual project management, one of the things that I believe is going to become apparent as we start, I guess, like reviewing the work of various parties that are contributing code and various software and things, we'll need someone also to go over like the technical deliverables that we're getting and kind of give thumbs up, thumbs down. And that's going to be also like, I guess, part of the additional requirements we're going to have. I think right now, for example, as we're working on IBC, at some point, I assume that the ENF is going to be providing some like code reviews or like thumbs up, thumbs down on what we're going to be submitting, and then everything that gets submitted by anyone will have to go through the same process. And I think it would be a good idea to also have other resources than the ENF providing that service. So from our chain can certainly contribute, and might be some other people in the WAX and TELOS ecosystem. But I see that as like something that we're going to need. It might also be a good idea to kind of add this, I guess, to the mandate of whoever is drafting the RFPs. Like not only would they draft the RFPs, but they would also measure whether or not the deliverables are essentially like answering these RFPs correctly. So anyway, just some additional thoughts on the topic.
A few things, Kirsten, if you want to reopen that item, Darren is DARYN. There's no second A. And what you were mentioning, Guillaume, in terms of, I guess, project management, once the project has been approved, the bids, essentially the bidder's been approved, the project starts. Of course, yes, we would internally to the ENF, we have those resources. So prior to me taking my vote of yes, this item, this milestone has been completed, I vote for yes, let's release payment. I would imagine that every chain wants to have that function to a certain degree. Otherwise, you're all relying on probably our resources to tell you, and then essentially then your vote becomes kind of irrelevant to a certain extent. Yeah. Having said that, though, maybe not. Maybe we don't need 4 people that are following along, and maybe we figure out a different way where and I think ENF provides that function, somebody else provides a different function to say, yes, right, release payment, we're good. Like it doesn't need to be everybody does everything. But yes, right now I do see that it's if ENF says yes, essentially like it's yes, because nobody else is following along at that level. So what would be the other functions that would be required? Like part of it is tech, but then tech is also, I guess, ENF right now. So it'd be great, whether it's project management or tech or marketing or whatever it may be, that we distribute those functions. So it's not just ENF, so that the other votes are somewhat carry weight or they have relevance. It's not just a rubber stamp.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. You guys shouldn't be stuck doing everything. Everyone should shoulder some of the burden. And also want to second your notion that we really have to be able to have committees within or work groups or whatever that don't necessarily have to have somebody from each chain and like recognize that we're working together and not have to be so, it's terribly inefficient to do it that way. And
there's specialties as well, of course. We don't have nobody has unlimited resources, and obviously there's different aspects of work that require different type of expertise.
But it's also for redundancy, right? Like, right. Let's say we say yes. Let's say Jeff says yes. In this case, Jeff says yes. I'm good on my end. It would be nice to have kind of a backup of, oh, wait a minute, I'm also of a similar skill set, and I don't think that it meets the requirements currently.
We shouldn't be limiting it to one person, right?
So I think if I could throw out a kind of a best case is when the milestones are set, like every milestone could potentially require a different skill set, as you guys have acknowledged, but that would be a good time to figure out who is going to jump in for, a specific milestone. And sometimes it might be the same person for a number of related milestones, because, that makes sense. But if we figure that those things out at the beginning or near the beginning of a project, then this is less of a surprise and there's less scrambling at the end where, the developers think something's done, but now they're kind of waiting for somebody to tell them it's done and that kind of thing.
What we could do is as each of these technical deliverables come, or in whatever kinds of deliverables there may be, it could be marketing deliverables. Each of the deliverables comes in, we could set. I know this sounds. We could assign 2 approvers to each one, right? And so, it might be somebody might go, hey, I can handle most of this, but this thing is way outside my, and we find 2 people for each. And as it's just part of launching the project. It's like, not only do we have deliverables, but we know whose responsibility it is to vet those and sign off on those. Right. Yeah. Like without that, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of like, hey, when you have a rule, it's not enough just to have the rule. You have to understand how it's going to be enforced, and what the penalty is, right? And if in the same thing in here, if we have a deliverable, we need to know who signs off on that deliverable, probably from the beginning. And if things change down the road, if somebody, whatever goes, tours the world or something, then we have to find a replacement. But if we have it from the beginning, while it adds a lot up front, it's going to be done, and people are going to know that they are who's expected to review what, and it's not going to be a surprise. And the contractor who's doing it knows who to bug for that, for that approval, right? So setting up the approvers for each major deliverable, seems like the way to go to me.
This comes close to the discussion that Jeff and I started a while ago in regard of don't take the word as given. Is like steering committees for each of the main developments. So it's basically this. We could call it develop product champion or champions or whatever title we give that. So, but that will be the people that determine with their expertise if the deliverables are achieved and if the solution is what we expected, and technically approve that. And the question is obviously, and this is my opinion, it's about trust. So right now, or like 3 months ago, probably all of us would have loved to have one person of chain knowing all the bits and pieces and details of each and every development, because they generally wouldn't necessarily trust what somebody else develops. But I think we're getting closer to a point where we could say that for one development like IBC, as an example, we only have 2 people from 2 chains basically approving that because they know best if that's exactly what we want, and move forward with that. I think that's something to discuss.
Yeah, I don't think I don't personally. I don't think we need. I think we've gotten to a point past where we need to actually discuss it. I don't even care if they're from the same chain, right? So if 2 people from EOS are the ones who have they shouldn't. The one caveat I'd have is they can't be from the developers, right? So if Guillaume is if
he can't approve himself.
Yeah, exactly. It has, but to me, if 2 people from EOS or 2 people from Wax or whatever, anything, if I have faith in those people, I don't see at all how chain politics play into that. That would be like, I see no win. And basically the name. So when I did things for Microsoft, they would just have an approver. You would know from the very beginning who the approver was. They just called it an approver. It's it's actually great for everybody. And I think we can break these up granularly. But if Aaron tells me that something that Guillaume did works, or vice versa, I'm fine with that. Right. You as the approver, if there are big problems later on, your name is on there as approver. It's like, why did both of you guys approve this? Well,
ultimately the chain leads will also be responsible, because the transfer of funds, that doesn't occur with the approver, it occurs with the chain leads.
Right. It's just
so ultimately we're all responsible anyways. You're right.
Yeah. So I think what I wouldn't want to see is that there be chains that just never participate in these. Correct. Right. I want to see everybody. Ideally, want to see everybody make a actual contribution in responsibility. But I think I don't see how EOS can screw us, or Wax can get some cool advantage by falsely approving something, that their name's going to be on. I just don't see the win for anybody in that. So, and yeah,
I think there's a way where we don't want to over-engineer this, but I think the simplest way is when we have that list of milestones and we all know that's the beginning of this, let's just add columns onto it for the number of approvers and who who the approvers are. And the reason why, if we just do that and
exactly
then
what
have
I was
everybody look
proposing.
at it at the beginning, it's because we might find some milestones, they're small enough that everybody's like, you know what, one person can look at that and be fine. Other things might be so critical that every chain is going to want their own person. Like we just don't know, but that would be a simple way to cover all of the circumstances. Then we just
I
agree.
kind of like the two person approver thing for everything, because if it's simple, then it's simple to get somebody to come on and approve it. I think that I would encourage us to act like one organization, except on the very large things, right? So I think that once we've approved something, once we're funding it, once we're doing all of these things, I just think we should act efficiently. And it's not efficient to have somebody from every chain. I'm
sorry, that's not what I was suggesting. I'm saying case by case basis. There might be major approvals that the chain leads are going to be really nervous approving because they're that critical without making sure they're represented. But that might be an exception. The majority of the time, honestly, and the reason why I'm saying even 2 approvers sometimes is overkill. We don't have like hundreds of people in the community working right now. So anything we can do to keep this as lightweight as possible, I think is worth considering. That's all. And by outlining it all up front, nobody's surprised. Like either everybody agrees or like Douglas, if you look at that and Eve goes, one person could do that. And you're thinking, no, I think 2 people need to. Well, then we just add a second person right up front. It's like that simple.
Yeah, same. I mean, I will be hunting out those very simple opportunities to approve, so I get credit for approving stuff that didn't take a lot of work for me. Or matches my limited skill set. But yeah, I think there might be very rare occasions where everybody wants to, but my guess is if somebody feels really strongly about it, right, they're gonna just make sure they're just gonna sign up to be one of the approvers, right? People will have different, like the things that I think any chain would want to be approver on are the things that are super important to that chain, right? Like if one chain doesn't have any need for something, wouldn't want them to be an approver because I would want it to be the people most affected. But so will they. That'll be the self-interest of everybody. I mean, if there's something going on, I'm going to hope that Jesse or somebody from our team is on it and really double checks and make sure it works perfect for TELOS. It works and it works for us, then we'll approve it. So I think two approvers is fine. And I think if there are extreme, conditions, that's fine too. But I don't think we need to. I don't think there'll be many of those edge cases that we need to plan for.
So does everybody agree that 2 is a good number for that? I mean, we decided on a case-by-case basis, so I think that it's fine to leave it standing as this. But maybe Guillaume, do you have a position on that?
No, I think it's perfectly reasonable. It's preferable.
I would not put a limit on the number. I would say that if a particular item requires more, I know how I take my votes. I go to the functional authority that I believe is a subject matter expert. And in some cases that can be 2, 3, 4 people, whatever it may be. I seek their advice and their guidance before I give my vote. And so regardless of whether I'm the approver or Jeff is marked as the approver, before I'm going to go and sign any MSIG on chain to transfer funds, I'm going to double check with the person or the people that I trust. Now, like Jeff said, it's quite possible that it's going to be a very quick process for some of them. And for others that are very, very technical, I'm going to take my time to make sure that before we sign an okay, if it's for merging a PR or releasing a large amount of funds, I'm going to make sure that ultimately it's going to be my name in the MSIG. I will feel comfortable before signing that. And whatever that means to me will be on a case-by-case basis. Now, who I get my information from, most likely it's going to be the people that are determined to be the approvers for that. What I'm saying is I would not limit it necessarily to that. And so I would agree with what Douglas said, perhaps 2 as the minimum. And in some instances, it may be more than 2. Right?
Yeah,
and
that makes
perhaps
sense.
in some instances of exception, it might also be 1 where it's, I can't think of anything, but maybe we all agree, like, yeah, this is just a simple thing. Like, it's been done. For example, I don't know, maybe the milestone is the website is live. I don't need 2 people to tell me the website is live, for example.
Yeah, but if it's simple, then it's simple to get a second person.
Correct.
To
Which is
approve
why I'm okay with 2 approvers minimum, but no necessarily maximum.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say in my interest in streamlining the process does not mean that I expect anybody to rush through their actual approval, right? Every year, that's part of your name being on it, right? Your name's on it. So if you approve it and it fucks up, then
we're ultimately responsible. As the
yeah,
chain leads, we're ultimately responsible for this.
Yourself. Right.
So the person who gave the recommendation of approval also will share responsibility, but ultimately it's Jesse, Lucas, Guillaume, and myself.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, great.
For paying. I mean, well, approvals are more granular because it's possible that some approvals may trigger payments, but it's something that, like, if you look at what the contract you and I were just looking at, then they may be based on time milestones instead of deliverable milestones, possibly. So or something could require, there may be several items, right, deliverables that together have to happen before there's more commonly it'd be that latter thing.
That part's yes. The first part of just time, I'm pushing back on that so that there's no just time basis. There's no perhaps there's a around time base, but it has to be a tangible milestone of this is complete.
Okay.
And you're right, though, that the final payment for that particular milestone may be comprised of multiple sub approvals of different milestones, right? Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's no.
I very much agree with you as well that my concern is more so that it's not always the same people. I would like to see a broader range of people getting involved. That way, the workload is shared because nobody gets compensated for that. So it'd be great if everybody somehow steps up to the plate. And I'll keep repeating that for everything that we do in the coalition.
Yeah, we're going to have to, use all the, shame, cajoling, everything to make sure that everybody is carrying their weight.
I think that's an advantage of publishing the assignees at the beginning, because everybody in the coalition will see who's participating up front. And there might be an imbalance, and it might be justified, because of where, expertise are housed. But at the same time, maybe it's, we should look for an opportunity for other people to rebalance.
Yeah. And if you're not, if that is becoming unbalanced, in that one thing, then perhaps there's some other unpleasant task that must be done that could, well, these guys don't do very many approvals, but they're sure great at whatever. And that's how they're carrying their weight. We should look at it in total, but yeah, we all have an ongoing responsibility to each other to make sure we're pulling our weight to the extent, this is not just money, that you got to put time and energy into this thing as well.
Yeah. Okay. So we got this. I think we got this point agreed generally. So that's great. Yeah. I would like to move over to the last item on the actual agenda, which is block explorer discussions. So Obviously, Jesse presented the OBE last week, and I would like to know, is this something that we can discuss openly in the stream already?
I believe we can. I mean, I think part of the discussion is so right now, let me backtrack. In the priorities that we've set at as the coalition early on, the 22 items or so, a block explorer does not fall within those 22 priorities. I would be comfortable in advocating for a block explorer to now fall in one of those priorities. And then looking at, okay, well, what does that look like? Doing an RFP for that, and essentially going out to tender to either merge the current block explorer in, and or seeing how we can take this on as a priority for the coalition, if that makes sense. Or is it just informal and we just merge it in the new repo and we just start contributing to it?
Yeah, I think it's fair to have recognize that there are emergent priorities that weren't initially seen, but due to changes like we saw with this, we need to respond and do something. And so I wouldn't just say, hey, it wasn't it wasn't our original priorities list, because we should mostly stick to that. But I think there are cases where we should be willing to open up to things that come up that, more changing market conditions or changing, availability of tools that we relied on. We didn't vote on a block explorer because we assumed that the current systems were going to be okay. Right. So, I think it falls under that. And yeah, the question is, if we think that's important, well, that's the first question. Then how do we proceed? Do we create an RFP? Do we just start having people contribute to it? Do we offer funds for people who are contributing to it? Or do we just hope, do we just want everybody to be doing, the part that they need for their chain, and ultimately the repo just kind of grows with no, as it will, but not with any particular speed or cohesive direction.
So yeah, taking your comment, Eve. So generally, you would propose to vote. Let me say it like this, because obviously, as we can contribute the OBE, we have an interest in this. So you as EOS would propose to add a block explorer to the priority list. Can we take it like this?
Yes, I would support that, and I would support the coalition if there's onboarding from the three other chains, commissioning an RFP to be done, so that again, all based on whether or not the other chains also agree. So whether or not the coalition deems this to be a priority, deems this to be a high enough priority to want to make an RFP, I would support that. Yes. So I would support the creation of an RFP for this. So for this to be added as a priority. And this would be a block explorer, not for each respective chain. It would be the word that I'm not going to mention, block explorer. It would be the function of having a block explorer open and available to all.
Yes.
And this goes beyond the current 4 members. It would be anybody in the future who is leveraging EOSIO and what it's going to be called, to have that function of when they launch a chain, to be able to have a base block explorer that is maintained by, and the functions maintained by this coalition.
Yes, that's the advantage. Like other software that we create, it may benefit. It's likely to benefit any user of our core technology or ecosystem beyond just beyond just these four, the four members.
Yeah, this is just another tool. And likewise, I would say a testnet as well. And the testnet part, I think we will have, it is part of the bid for Faster Finality IBC. And so I would also say that, so we're already getting that, but I would put that in the same category.
For 1 year.
Maintenance of, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
The maintenance of afterwards, of that being a function that this coalition would take on. So that you'd have a base block explorer and base block explorer code, a base, base testnet type of thing. Those would be functions that the coalition develops and maintains.
Yeah,
so
and it'd be the
costs.
it'd be the new branded name testnet.
Yes. So Aaron is writing things. Yes, the list goes on and on and on. Correct. Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So many things.
But the one block explorer is kind of the base right now. So in order of complexity, you're right that we can keep adding for sure.
Yeah, but when we
I think
the topic that's being brought up right now is really
this would be like Atom Explorer on that Cosmos uses, and it becomes an advertisement for Cosmos, and become an advertisement for us. How easy it is to spin up something with our core technology and join a site where people are going to be going and looking at chain operations and other tools, right? So it becomes part of the critical tooling.
But
Aaron,
just to add,
go for it, Gil.
Just to add to this, I think also like we should work on the process by which new possible priorities are being considered, and how we also maintain these priorities over time. Right now we're talking about OBE and Block Explorer and potentially other things. But if we took a step back, going back to that spreadsheet at the time that Ted put together with the current priorities, and at some point I was subsequently locked, I would suggest maybe like starting from that point and allowing for like a more dynamic system through which we can add more priorities and cast our votes on a continuous basis. And perhaps like take snapshots every now and then.
Yeah, maybe this is something we redo every 2 months.
Right.
Yeah. We also, but because we also don't want to get distracted by every shiny object that comes along. I think we should have a preference for what we've already approved.
Exactly.
But have some periodic basis where we maybe it's quarterly where we update the priorities and see what changes and can bring in other things. Generally, I think that's
where it falls in the list of priorities too. So just because it's prioritized doesn't mean that it gets highly scored. So maybe it now makes the top 20, but it's in 16th position. There's still other things that perhaps still outrank it.
Right. And I would say that this is in the bucket of an emergent opportunity or need or something like that. Obviously, if there's and there could be others as bad as like some kind of security patch, that obviously becomes, in fact, we should at some point talk about what our processes are going to be for security patches. But that becomes obviously that we kind of need to drop everything for, I would assume.
Well, yeah, and that's something completely different, right? So the current code base right now is pretty much 100% maintained by the ENF at this stage. So how does that no longer be the case, if that makes sense?
So we already have live, Stephen wanted to present it and we were, just the timing wasn't right. Last week's call, Stephen is unfortunately not here today. It's a private repo. I'm trying to pull it up if you guys are interested. We now have the top 22 items and they're tagged and there's a whole bunch more data. And we did it just for this reason. So we can revisit them, whether it be once a quarter, once a month, whatever, and we can add new items such as the OBE into it and allow a revote, et cetera. So we have them running as what GitHub calls a beta project, and they can be sorted in multiple ways in the list. If I can find it before the call ends, I'll add it into the chat. So the trouble is, I think the repo is marked private, or at least the project is marked private. So if people were interested, I would probably need to bring it up and display it. So we have already kind of gone to having that in GitHub. I think he shouldn't have put it private. I think he just did it because he wanted to wait till he showed it to everyone and people agreed it was okay before we had it publicly out in GitHub.
Good. So, Guillaume, what's your position on that? Would you second the proposal of EOS?
To officially add an RFP for OBE.
And put it on the...
That's not my proposal. My proposal would be just to double check. So my proposal would be to have the exercise of determining whether or not that becomes a priority for everybody, taking a vote on that, scoring that, whatever that may be. And if it ranks high enough, then I would also support the RFP. It is possible that UX says, but I like, let's have the exercise, but I don't know what I'm going to vote for it. Maybe, 5 or whatever it is, maybe wax as well, whatever it may be. I'm just saying I'm okay with having that discussion and having that vote, let's say, of prioritizing it and seeing whether or not it becomes a high priority enough to be to go through an RFP.
Is this
to commission an RFP?
Would we consider, sorry, would we consider this potentially under the old RFP rules where TELOS could put together an RFP for this, or no, could put together a proposal for this, TELOS could put together the RFP for this, and then have the right of first bid on that?
I think
if the idea was OBE, I'd be okay with that.
I think Lucas also said that there was something in the works at Wax, and they would be interested in the same consideration. That
if they right, but a hard fast rule is that it's going to be open source, and they have to decide if they're going to open source it. One of the things I'd be concerned about is if TELOS if the TELOS team if it was just a basic RFP and we then anyone is free to use the OBE we've already built, right? But if TELOS did it, we would like to recapture some of the costs that went into that. Other people would be like, future money, so the getting underbid by people, who don't have any investment in the current one, would, technically be fine, but I don't think I'd feel great about it. You know what I mean? So maybe we put, and I know that Kirsten's already done a fair amount of work, of course, starting to put together costs and whatnot. I don't know, this is something I'm spitballing. I'd want to talk to the team about it first, but before that, I wanted to just see if you guys were amenable at all to doing it under the old rules, where we wouldn't necessarily be paid for it, but we'd have the first bid.
As Guillaume mentioned, Wax also potentially has something, so then we would need to discuss if they also intend on making theirs open, and what. So
fair enough.
I don't think it's that simple, just because they've also indicated.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I think we need to, the process would be first determine if this is even something we want to pursue. Next, by then, Wax could hopefully have a determination of whether they want to be involved or not. If they do, we could work on, find a way to work together on the RFP, or if not, if OBE is the only obvious contender at the moment, then and Wax is not interested in open sourcing part of their block explorer at that time, then we could consider moving forward this. If not, then we can hire somebody to do outsource the RFP, and then everyone can bid on it.
And this is all predicated upon it being ranked high enough to even go through this exercise.
Right. That was my first step. Yeah. That in the process I said.
Okay, yeah. So it's just that it seems though, because that was kind of my understanding before the last meetings, that EOS had some kind of urgency there, but that seems to be resolved somehow.
I wouldn't say that there's an urgency. I would say that it highlighted the fact that the coalition doesn't have an open source implementation of, and neither does EOS. Well, I guess by that, neither does any of them other than TELOS. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's an urgency in terms of getting an open source one, because there are other alternatives, but it is an item that was not discussed when priorities were coming about. And so having that discussion, I think is valuable. And then prioritizing it, I think is valuable, or at least going through the exercise. I also agree with what Guillaume said of also then revisiting the, how do we reprioritize and or prioritize new items as they come about, creating that framework. I think that that's very important. And then also in the chat, Aaron mentioned a few other items of, if we open it up to, for example, Block Explorer, Testnet, then there are the list goes on of other things as well. So, but then it all goes back to what Guillaume said of, how do we then add new items, reprioritize items, and go through that exercise of prioritization again? Because we've only done that exercise once. So what does that future framework look like?
And also let's remember the context under which we did that vote, which was largely a way to sort of, it was one of the very first things we did, and it was largely a way to just sort of start out working together, and see, and as it was as much a straw poll based on that. I think I'm not saying it would change if we voted today, but a lot has changed in our ability to work effectively with one another, and and so and of course a lot of those things are, a lot of those things were toolings that we didn't include a lot of outside toolings on some of these things. I mean, SDKs, yes, but things like practical implementations, like a testnet or a Block Explorer or a wallet or whatever, those were not immediately on our high priority list, even though perhaps they should have been. But we weren't,
and that's what we don't know. Perhaps they're not, because those perhaps remain at the individual chain level. I guess
absolutely.
Maybe that's what this exercise will reveal. But like Guillaume said, I think just doing this every 2 months or 3 months or whatever, I think is the most important part in all.
Yeah, right now it feels to me like it's a good time to do it. It's been 1 quarter, so it's I think a quarterly type of approach where we vote on priorities, we select which items we're gonna tackle during that quarter, and then next quarter we can revote on priorities, like we remove what's been already taken care of, and we kind of recast our votes, and again select which ones we're gonna tackle, and keep moving like that. I think that's what makes more sense.
Like Douglas said, it may also count for reprioritize. So the ones that are currently remaining that we haven't started may be differently prioritized now again. So some items that were prioritized may drop off the list.
Yeah. So if they're in action, that's one thing. But if they're not, then we can. Now, the one thing we should remember though is we are signaling to our broader communities what we're going to work on, and we don't want to seem capricious, because one of the benefits that we have for our community is they know which direction we're going, so they can build their own tools or not build them, or make their plans. So I think that we should just somehow bear that in mind and aim not to make radical changes, but that doesn't mean we can't make any changes. But let's keep in mind to balance that. One other thing. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think because we publish these, then there's the balance, like you mentioned. I don't think it needs a complete overhaul. And if there was, for whatever reason, then as a coalition, we'd have come to that conclusion. And so we'd be able to explain it. Either way, these are recorded and published, so people would see why that was the case. But I do agree that there needs to be leeway to change things while also not completely overhauling everything every quarter. There needs to be some level of general direction. I would imagine that that's going to be organic, that's going to be natural. That won't. And if there's a complete overhaul, the process by which that was overhauled is also public, so it'd be likely understood.
Yeah, and I'd add two pieces to that. One is because we are supposed to be taking feedback from our community, I would say we have a open comment period. Like we announce when those things are going to be, and we have a period for people to submit comments or preferences or requests that we're not bound by, but that we should be aware of what kind of things are coming in. Right? We have to give. We never had that from block one. So, and I want us to have that and give that to people. And then the second thing is so that would come first, then we would decide, we would take that into account as well as all the other things we take into account. When we make a decision, then we socialize and publicize that decision so that people know, especially if there's any like course corrections that we're making. I think with all those together, I think it's a good process that fits all of our core values that we've stated.
So we should likely, as a concrete item, actually start planning that next prioritization session.
Yes.
Yeah, and the open comment beforehand.
Correct.
Right.
Well, to accumulate items for one, yes, and then to prioritize them, and then another open session to gather feedback, and then ultimately kind of locking that in, let's say for the next quarter. And locking that in, I see very loosely in the sense that that would form the, somewhat of the North Star for discussions following up to, all right, now we've got capacity, we want to write a new RFP, we've got space in the treasury.
Yep.
All right, what comes next type of thing.
Yeah, and then that's actually an area where we can discover priorities, where we can discover people willing, able or to write RFPs, and just the optics of that. I'm not talking optics only, but the optics are great because it will be us doing what's not been done before, in our community. Walking the walk.
Yep, agree. And all of this is published and recorded, and then I really like this, and we should continue that.
So let me within all of this, I want to just mention one point specifically to OBE, and that is that back when we thought this was we thought this was a hot potato, we went out and preemptively went to a number of developer groups and said, hey, we think there's a good chance that we're going to be throwing a lot more, basically we said, hey, we know we told you guys that we were kind of winding down on this, but new things happened, and we want to see if we can, instead have the possibility of throwing more developers on it. We got that standing by, but at some point you have to, pull the trigger or
get off the pan
or release the hammer, right? Yeah, exactly. So you have to shit or cut bait. So this is, I think we owe it to our people to tell them whether this is something that we think is going to still happen in a short amount of time, which it's sounding like it's not, or if they should release their resources, and then thereby we kind of lose the ability to really hit the ground running quite as much. So just wanted to give you guys that notice, because what we've been saying, hey, if we start OBE now, we're set up so that we've got the current team going, but we've also got people standing by to build all the power up and all the other pieces that we decide we need. We can't do that indefinitely, though.
That brings up a good point of what is the scope of a block explorer, because we've gotten into this discussion on some other calls, but does power up belong in a block explorer? I know you just brought it up as an example, and
I brought it up as an example of I thought I brought up an example of something that I think is going to be, the Block Explorer has a wallet component. It's originally designed as a blocks replacer. So we aim to have, anywhere between 95 and 115% of the functionality of blocks, right?
Right. And that just might be what causes conflict in voting because, take Wax, for example. They have the cloud wallet. They don't need the wallet functionality. So if the Block Explorer pitch is to include wallet functionality, they may veto that. It's about defining the scope of all of these like usability tools themselves and figuring out what those RFPs actually look like and what the contents of those are. That'll define the features that go into those things. So that's kind of the only reason I brought it up. It's just that we don't know what parts belong in which applications until they're there and you guys vote on it.
Right. On a case per feature basis. I think we can't even imagine going forward with this not adding power up. And there's certain features that will be more attractive to some chains than others. And that's, just the way it goes. But when we think about a chain, when we think about this as a function that allows new chains to spin up in sort of any flavor, then that would be a Lego that I'd want in the box, in case the new kit chain is coming out and using power up or whatever they may use, right?
Yeah, but I think that's a very well point. But and I think we won't get further today because what needs to be done is the reprioritization session, which we should plan anyway. So we can look at that, and Jeff and I we can touch base on and organize that. So we work on that and have a clear picture of if the priorities have changed and which things we would like to add to that. So we will start that process. So understandably, Block Explorer is part of this or not part of this, depending on how the chains vote. So, and then I don't think it brings added value today to further continue the discussion because we need to have that reprioritization. Yeah. And then I totally agree with you, Aaron.
We need to define the terms, Kirsten.
Yes.
And that's, I think, what we need to define the terms. And that's what Aaron is saying is, what does Block Explorer mean?
Yes.
And so if Block Explorer to you means the Swiss Army knife, that may mean differently to me, that may mean differently to Lucas. And so we may all be voting yes or no on something else. That's not what...
Right. We need a common definition.
We need a common definition. We need to define the terms.
If I could throw this out, if you guys recall, there were a couple things several months ago that we didn't have blue paper definitions really. So we put together a simple one-page executive summary because I think we realized that a sentence in some cases is good enough, but in some cases we wanted a little bit of scope around it. That could be something that we do because a one-page summary should not take us much time. I mean, that should be like sitting down with somebody who knows what they're talking about. And 15 minutes later, we've drafted like a one-page document and then have that attached to each one of the items.
Would it be fair that this executive summary be a requirement for submitting a like an item to vote on? Because
sure, yes, I think so. Yes.
Whoever wants
that
to
at least we know what we're
voting
on.
Exactly.
Great.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would say that my definition of a Block Explorer is very, very narrow. It's a Block Explorer. So it's not a Swiss Army knife.
Right.
So I believe that we have Block Explorers that also do other things, and those are Swiss Army knives. In my opinion, a Block Explorer is the block exploration function, not the other features.
Okay, so we have a very busy week with the announcement and everything surrounding it coming up in less than a week from today. So we will also be able, so I think this makes sense. Like if somebody wants to make proposals for things, they can write it up, they can propose it to the group. We can vote on whether that's our definition of X, Y, or Z.
But this week we should concentrate on what's ahead of us. And once we have next week we'll be able to talk more openly about some of these things, with people in the community, because we won't be hiding the new branding.
Yeah, fair enough. So I'll volunteer to start writing like an executive summary for the Block Explorer, and check that with Aaron and you, Eve, for some basic initial comments, and then so trying to start to have a definition of what this could be and how it could be extended, and which kind of triggers we could have to make it just the Block Explorer or the Swiss Army knife, based on a component model. So I will start to draft something and share that with you guys and for commenting. And also send that to Lucas, because obviously their requirements are also very different to the ones of TELOS.
Yeah, I'll send you the link. In fact, I'm sending it right now to the Drive space that had the existing ones, and that there's templates in there. I mean, that seemed to work last time. If you change it, I don't think anybody's gonna be upset, but I know for me, I like to start from a
excellent. Thank you.
Is it too early to maybe try to put in your Miro board, Kirsten, a tentative date for that we would work towards? Because I see in the chat, Aaron says he'd also like a document template for this one pager thing, that we put a kind of a date that we're working towards to do this next prioritization session, whether it be in, I don't think it can't be next week, but maybe in 3 weeks and in 4 weeks type of thing, so that we start accumulating these one pagers for those who actually have items.
We already have a
few. But I mean, for those that aren't in there, Gil.
Right.
So that, let's say I'm just making
but
this
for
thing
a
up,
template like
September.
These,
What I'm saying is so that we work towards, I'm just making this date up, but September 11th of, hey, now we've accumulated all of these extra new one-pagers, templates that people have filled in, that we'll vote on. Like, do we want to put a deadline? Is it too early to put a tentative date towards when we want to do that next prioritization exercise?
That's a month from now.
I see on the screen like September 8th, for example.
Yeah,
I think something like a month is 1 month. Pretty good.
Like September 8th.
Yeah.
That's 3 weeks from now. That gives enough time probably for the Block Explorer one, for Aaron's ones perhaps, and just that they can change. It's just now we've got it on the recurring agenda.
Yeah, I would second that. I think that's 3 weeks is a good timing for people. So we lose in brackets 1 week next week due to all the announcements and preparations for that. And then we have 2 weeks to draft some of those documents to bring them into the consideration. I would second that.
Awesome. That way we know, or at least we've got a tentative. Let's work. Let's try to do this early September.
And just to clarify, that's actually 4 weeks, Kristen.
Is it? I thought September 8th is in 3 weeks. Oh no, you're right. It is in 4 weeks. Even
you're right.
We're not the 18th. Obviously. We're not the 18th. That's
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Is that everything that's on our agenda for today?
The only thing I wanted to touch on is the status of the IBC Faster Finality document. I didn't follow that one up. There was discussion in the chat, and Lucas replied. Is that back to the lawyers, Guillaume?
Yes, exactly. Like I was just wanted to give Lucas an opportunity to review the agreement and suggest any changes. He said that it looked good to him. So just before the call today, so we sent back Eve's and Douglas' comments to our legal team, and they are working on a revision. I'm expecting, usually like they're pretty quick. Like I'm expecting to have something. I mean, hopefully by the end of the week, tomorrow, but certainly probably won't be later than Monday or Tuesday next week, worst case.
Awesome.
Excellent.
That's great.
Yeah.
So the changes that we I guess the reviews or the feedback that we gave are quite minor. So I would think that once that comes back, it'll be relatively quick anyways on my end to approve and or to be ready to even sign type of thing. The part that we still need to figure out, I had a few questions in there in terms of the governance of the IP, because the IP does come alongside it, as well as in the creation of this new entity that would be the home of this IP essentially. That's, I think, going to be the larger, I shouldn't say more difficult. There's definitely logistics in how do we incorporate a new entity that would be the home of this. Outside of that, I think it was pretty clean, pretty good.
Because for that part, we can always write the contract in such a way that the parties agree to add a addendum to that contract or like another contract that kind of work with that one that defines this IP transfer, and that
that'll
could
transfer it over later. Yeah,
exactly. So like that,
and we have something. We have like 2 years, right, or something like that. Either way.
Yeah. No, it's not like as long as we have an understanding, and like we can essentially like just have that stage, that the exact details can push that in front of us like a little bit longer, because we don't even know, we don't even have a timeline or haven't discussed even the creation of an entity to represent the coalition. At some point, it may be a good idea. And I know that also if we want to go further along the direction of the super token, it may also make sense to discuss that at the same time, because I could see how they would all converge together. So anyway, I think for now we just keep it open. We just put a note there that coalition gives itself like, let's say like 6 months or something to sort out that structure, and can always extend it if we haven't came to any conclusion in 6 months.
Sounds good. Two things on that. One is perhaps it would be worthwhile then to be. I was kind of the lead for the when at the time there was a working subgroup well before this coalition was formed, but when the other chains who ultimately didn't join the coalition was still part of that, they were the only ones in that subgroup. So basically that's dead. But if others wanted to reignite that discussion, we should probably do that. So reignite that subgroup. Ultimately it'd be a new subgroup because Proton, I believe, was in there. They're no longer there, and they were the only ones. So if people want to join that, then that'd be good. And then the second thing on that is the discussion. I think that I didn't really hear any feedback from other people, but this idea that the code itself, we would also need to choose which license it's under. My personal preference is something along the lines of, and I don't know which license that would be, but something that enables others to be able to use, but that it requires them to acknowledge in some way, shape, or form. Having said that, it's more symbolic than anything, because likely the official version, if they wanted to be whitelisted and be part of the official bridge that we somehow maintain, they would need to acknowledge us because they'd be part of the official run, right? And that's where a lot of value is, anyways.
Yeah, and that's something also we should probably discuss and brainstorm and eventually decide. Would it be like only open to member of the coalition? Would there be like a fee associated to that? Would there be like
licensing or whatever? Well, there are people that have already started reaching out. There are two chains that have reached out so far. So that's definitely an
and that's why I think naturally it goes that discussion leads to the super token discussion, because that's kind of how that whole thing eventually plays out in my opinion, under one shape or form. So
Guillaume, because you guys are leading this particular project, and right now the IP is currently yours, do you mind leading the legal discussions? And I'd like to be part of those, of what that entity could look like, where it'd be incorporated and such. Can you create that channel, and whoever else wants to be a part of that can then join?
With pleasure.
And I see that, Kirsten, thank you very much. You've pulled up on screen the work that had been done on that, so that we're picking back off what was done earlier.
Yes. So it was still on the backlog. So we now revise that and create a new work group based on that. And Guillaume will.
And just as we are on the topic, just one thing that our legal team will need for that particular agreement that they're going to be working on right now is the legal entities for all the chains. So I'm assuming it's okay to reuse the same ones that everyone submitted earlier on for the invoices to
us.
Right. Or you, I think, issued an invoice to all of them.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So if you look at that information, I would imagine that that's the proper, because it was TELOS Foundation. It was the wax entity, though you may want to confirm with Lucas. And yes, in the invoice, we had our address. You can use that.
Yeah. TELOS Foundation is correct for us.
Yep.
Okay.
So you just need to double check with Lucas.
Yeah, I will.
Awesome. Excellent. Okay, then last topic, because there have been some discussions with Aaron, Eve, and Douglas regarding the SDKs. You want to give a short update on that discussion?
Sure. I'll make it very quick. So Douglas, Aaron, and I met, and we provided recommendations to Aaron. Aaron went back with his team and made the majority of those changes. Well, pretty much all of the changes, and then sent back a revised version to myself and Douglas. Douglas, maybe you want to chime in. I don't know what feedback you gave after that. I said that generally I was good with everything, but there's one key part that is missing. And so I put Jeff in touch with Aaron today, and it's for the milestones portion, to try and break that up so that we have I would prefer not a time-based milestone, but a function-based milestone, which originally was kind of removed, but anyways, a little bit of work there. And once that's done, I would be good. I think all is missing essentially is not so much the content or so, it's the where to break. What needs where to break, as in the function of this is done, now we pay, where that is, like the time and the item itself. But pretty much everything is done. So I would be comfortable then presenting to the coalition and recommending approval.
Okay, I didn't share mine because I wanted to talk, direct. I thought we were going to have one more meeting. That's fine. And I need to jump now, so it's not the right time. But I'll talk with you guys offline. Mine is pretty similar to yours. The one other thing I'd want to express, and I think I said this in the chat, is that instead of, more than just working on one proposal, what we tried to do is make this a common framework for future proposals. What rates, what rates would be for different tiers of developers, basically start to standardize this so that we have something that we can use
kind
going
of a baseline
forward.
Yeah.
So I think we actually accomplished a lot more than just and Aaron was fantastic in being open to that and being our test case for that. So but I think this will serve us really well. That's the only thing I would add to how that process went. With that, I have to go, guys.
Aaron?
Thank you.
Aaron, you're still friends?
Oh, yeah. I
not sure about that part, but
I was going to chime in here and say, if I knew what sound a guinea pig made, I would try to make it right now. But
and what Douglas was referring to there for the others is that we now have the RFP, the bid and the milestones for Faster Finality and IBC. And so we've got baselines there with numbers. And then we've got the SDK one. And so they're starting to have some overlap in terms of cost per function. And if we can standardize that, it will make it easier for people going forward so that they know kind of the range of this function is worth about this much, this function is worth about this much. So that then instead of recreating the wheel every time, we've got a, kind of a pretty clear baseline that can be reused throughout so that this becomes easier for future teams to bid.
Excellent. Okay, so these are the items that I wanted to cover for today. Do we have any topics on the P2P RFP? Is there any updates on this one? This is the last one sprang to my mind.
I screwed that one up earlier. I thought that's what we were talking about earlier.
No,
actually, I do have an update on that.
But the
I have
schedule.
an update on that. Oh, go for it. Sorry, Jeff.
No problem. We don't have a update other than the fact that OCI is going through and they're on schedule for the RFP development process. So, we could probably move on to the next topic. I'll actually look up when the date is.
They said they would have it by the date, which is August 23rd.
August 23rd. Thank you. That's what I was going
earlier today. Yep. So they're saying no problem. They'll make that date.
Yep.
And I've got something on that, which is kind of just a nugget of interest. I was at ETH Toronto / Futurist conference earlier this week, and OCI was there, and I met Phil Mesner. For those of you who don't know Phil Mesner, he's, if not the first, one of the first people that worked on EOSIO. So he's like OG. And he was saying that he would like to work on this. He works for OCI. And so for those who kind of like Phil or know of Phil, I would imagine that probably he's going to be one of the people working on that. So it's kind of a cool thing. He hasn't worked in EOS for quite some time.
Yeah. Phil's okay. We like Phil.
Just to confirm, it was August 23rd or 28th? 23rd.
23rd.
Okay, good. Excellent. So this was the last item. There's nothing more from your side, I would love to call the close the call.
Call the close.
I call the close.
Let's call the close.
And Eve, I will remove that item. So I second what you said regarding that invoice. So I remove that and put out a new invoice very soon.
And we can talk about that as well. I think we just need to figure out how that works going forward, so it's easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so thanks everybody. Have a great evening, morning, day, whatever. Stay healthy, and see you latest next week.
Take care, guys, and
Thanks,
women.
Very well.